For this week's edition of Tech 24, France 24's Charlotte Lam joins me in the studio, and we're returning to one of the biggest stories this week, Charlotte, the massive trove of documents that's dragging some of tech's biggest names into the spotlight. Tell us more.
Well, that's right. In the latest batch of the Epstein files released by the US Department of Justice, which is more than 3 million pages of documents, images, and videos, it seems the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein cultivated a network of powerful tech leaders and executives in the early to mid 2010s. Now, today we're going to break down who is mentioned in these files and why it matters. Now, we can show you now a long list of some of these really big names that shows up in Epstein's inbox, including Elon Musk, who really pushed for the release of these files during his spat with the US president just last year. We have Bill Gates, who's facing some serious unverified allegations, Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn, Peter Thiel from PayPal, he's the co-founder turned political activist, Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, we have Alphabet's ex-president, Apple's CEO, Google former CEOs, and of course Jeff Bezos, who's believed to be mentioned up to 190 times. Now, none of these people have been accused of participating in Epstein's abuse or the trafficking of minors, but what's new here is the depth of communication. We're seeing scheduling, communication, documentation, previously unseen links that add a texture to these relationships that we had only previously partially understood. And some of these relationships really appear closer than others, like Gates and Thiel and Hoffman. Others like Bezos and Sergey Gin, they appear on group emails Epstein received, and others like Apple's Tim Cook, he surfaced through schedules or assistance messages.
So beyond socializing with these tech leaders, the files also point to Epstein's interest in investment and emerging technology. What do they tell us?
Well, in many cases, it appears that Epstein was the one trying to connect with them more so than the other way around. But these files do also show that some tech leaders actively sought out his advice, and that's on investments, fundraising, and even personal matters. So the New York Times reported Thursday that Epstein wasn't just socializing with tech leaders, he was putting money into their world. He invested about $3 million into the crypto exchange Coinbase in 2014, and tens of millions into funds managed by Peter Thiel. And this is well after he pleaded guilty for soliciting a minor for prostitution in Florida, and that was in 2008. So despite that conviction, it seems that Epstein continued to circulate in among these high-tech elites. And while this was at a very important time, while e-commerce and social media and early AI were really reshaping the world. So Hoffman, Musk, and Thiel, they're all former PayPal executives from the company's early days, and this really illustrates just how small the tech world is. And they have all greatly added to their wealth since then and have been heavily involved in politics too.
So for some executives, especially Elon Musk, the documents actually suggest a closer connection to Epstein than previously acknowledged.
Well, it was just last year that Musk came out and said that he had refused to go to Epstein's private Caribbean island. But in these newly released emails, we can see that Musk actually asked about visiting the island several times in 2012 and 2013. They discussed dates. Epstein offered to send a helicopter at one point, and Musk even asks where the wild parties would be. Now, these emails don't confirm whether he ever went to the island, but once they surfaced, Musk did fire off a series of posts on X, calling for justice for the victims, reiterating that he was the one that did push for these files to be released, and denied going to any parties, saying that Epstein had tried to get him there, but he had always refused. And since then, we know that Musk and the LinkedIn founder, Reid Hoffman, have been publicly sparring on the platform, accusing each other of poor judgment. The files show that Hoffman discussed visits to Epstein's properties and received political advice from Epstein as late as of 2017. And it's that ongoing contact that's shocked many observers in this latest release. But authorities do insist that they have not accused either man of any wrongdoing.
So I guess all this brings us to the next big question, Charlotte, which is, will there be any repercussions, real repercussions for these tech giants?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, there have been no criminal consequences tied to these men from these files just as yet, but it really underscores a bigger picture here, which is even after the sex offender status, that Jeffrey Epstein stayed in the mix with these tech power players and even helped improve their influence, rather. So back in 2019, we do know that Hoffman did step down from MIT's Media Lab, and he did issue a public apology. And what we could see now is potentially a reputational fallout from the latest release of these files. Bill Gates has already come out saying that he regrets every minute that he spent with Epstein. And it's important to say again that appearing in emails or calendars isn't evidence of criminal involvement, and no charges have been brought forward. Still, the scrutiny is real, and it's raising bigger questions about transparency, power play, and how Silicon Valley and tech heavyweights, how they really operate.
Right, Charlotte, thank you so much for bringing all that to light for us. That's Charlotte Lamb for Tech24.